Before joining Kiss, Paul Charles Caravello, Eric Carr is his stage name, was washing dishes and cleaning ovens. Eric joined Kiss in 1980. He was very lucky to get the gig that any one of 10,000 or more other people would have taken, and Eric was thankful to Kiss. When Paul and Gene saw that Eric was driving an old yellow Dodge Colt to rehearsals, they said, "Oh, that's not a car for a rock star," and purchased a brand new Porsche 924 for Eric as a Christmas present. Of course, that was very generous from Paul and Gene. Now, a few words about Eric's Porsche. It was an entry-level model, and the price was around $10,000 in the U.S. It was a non-turbo 2.0-liter engine model. Eric used it to drive to rehearsals or to see his girlfriend. He lived in Middletown, and she lived in Rockland County. But then the Porsche started to break down, and Eric ended up leaving it in the garage most of the time. He called it a money pit. After Eric's death, his sister kept it on her property until 2012, when it was then moved to Las Vegas to the Kiss Monster Mini Golf and Museum. In 2022, the car was given away to a guy named Bob Mosley to be restored and find new life. You can check out his channel. The link is below the video. There's actually a photo of Bruce Kulick with a big smile on his face as he stands next to Eric's Porsche on his visit to the Kiss Mini Golf. No doubt he can still recall Eric's good and bad times with the car. As Eric would always say, it is a money pit. Nonetheless, he loved to drive it. What was Eric's role in Kiss? Well, of course, Eric wasn't a full member of Kiss. He was a salaried employee like all the other members who joined the band after Peter Criss and Ace Frehley. Apparently, his contract was pretty much like Vinnie Vincent's contract. Eric got a salary, and most of his and Bruce Kulick's daily living expenses would have fallen under per diems while they toured. New outfits, travel, food, etc. would have been covered, so that was good. Eric and Bruce could save every dollar earned while they lived off touring. Chris Lent, Kiss's traveling money manager, stated in his book that the 1980s were very lean years for Kiss. Touring took place just to keep money rolling in to pay bills. Paul and Gene had personal savings accounts, but their monthly expenses were out of control, and management didn't reveal that they both owed millions to the IRS. When asked if Eric Carr's and Bruce Kulick's salaries were $2,000 per week, which would be $104,000 annually, Chris Lent replied, "More or less. I think that Eric's salary was at one point higher, but he had to take a pay cut because of Kiss's financial woes." So, when Vinnie Vincent joined Kiss 2 years later, the band was in financial trouble, and therefore, sadly, Vinnie didn't get a Porsche. On whether Eric and Bruce received any publishing royalties, Chris said, "I believe that they received writers' royalties for the share of any songwriting that they did. Kiss owned the publishing rights. Their salaries were not inclusive of compensation for songwriting duties. Neither Bruce nor Eric were songwriters for hire, as the term is defined in the music industry." On whether the Animalize, Asylum, and Crazy Nights tour were profitable, Chris said that during that period, the tours broke even, at best, from concert fees, monies earned through ticket sales. Profits were generated from the sale of merchandise at the concert venues. When asked if Paul and Gene were millionaires at the time he left the Kiss organization, Chris said, "They each would have had personal assets, mostly the value of their homes, in the $1 million range. Their business was in a precarious state, however. Monies coming in were being chewed up by expenses that enabled them to continue operating as a business. And they had a huge tax liability on the horizon stemming from a tax shelter that the government decided would be disallowed retroactively." So, if Eric and Bruce got $100,000 per year in the late 80s, that was a pretty good wage, because $100,000 in 1989 is equal to about $255,000 today, $250,000. And don't forget that Kiss wasn't doing very well financially back in those days. It is rumored that in 1994-95, Bruce Kulick got $300,000 a year as an employee of the Kiss Corporation. When Kiss reunited with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss in the mid-90s, the tour featured smarter management. So, in addition to the wild success, money was just handled better, and Ace and Peter became multimillionaires again, even as paid participants. For the reunion tour, both Peter and Ace made about $50,000 to $60,000 each per concert. In Peter's book, he says Paul told him that he'd need to take a cut in pay, so from Psycho Circus onwards, he made about $40,000 per concert, while Ace was secretly making $50,000 and getting a cut of merchandise sales. Tommy Thayer, who was the lead guitarist for Kiss from 2002 to 2023, and Eric Singer, of course, were not getting as much as Ace and Peter, but were paid pretty well. But how did Bruce Kulick feel for not being in Kiss since 1995? Looks like in the end, Bruce Kulick feels a little bit bitter for not being invited to perform at the Kiss End of the Road final shows, and he wasn't invited to attend the event either, which was held at New York City Madison Square Garden. This is what Bruce said: "I've always missed being in Kiss, but if being in Kiss meant being the spaceman like Tommy, I wouldn't want to do it. And if being a part of the final shows meant I had to ask to be there, I'd rather stay home. I guess that's why Ace respects me and has always been kind to me." In another interview, Bruce said, "I don't know if Peter and Ace were ever contacted. All I can tell you is I was never contacted. That's a fact. And that is nothing to lie about. But regardless, you can't go out there and say, well, I would do it, but I've got to get $250,000, like Ace said." And I'm just like, that's not good optics for anybody. I know what he feels like. He feels like he should be compensated because he created the spaceman with them. But let's go back to Eric Carr. Eric was the Kiss drummer for about 12 years, from 1980 to 1991. In February 1991, Eric began feeling ill. He was later diagnosed with heart cancer. On November 24th, 1991, Eric Carr died at the age of 41. In a March 2023 interview, Paul Stanley expressed regret over the way Kiss handled Eric Carr's 1991 cancer battle. Paul said he wishes Kiss had treated Eric Carr's illness with more sensitivity, and he regrets that the drummer felt betrayed by the band during the health battle that ultimately cost him his life. "I didn't believe that he could possibly die," Paul said. "I thought this was a new ongoing condition. Okay, he's got this and then it'll go away. And if I had known, I think we would have treated it a little bit more sensitively. We took care of him, we paid his medical bills, but we also told him we're going to continue as a band while he's sick." Well, he wasn't while he was sick, he was dying. Kiss dedicated 1992's Revenge to Eric Carr and closed the album with an instrumental track featuring an extended solo by the drummer.